Hello and welcome to How to Win the Lottery Season 2 bonus episode interview with Bud Smith, author of Teenager. I'm Joey Lewandowski.
I'm like all fucked up about what my name is here. But I got a job and now I like can't use my name, I feel.
You can. You may, I mean, it's up to you to not say incriminating, indemnifying things.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's just...
What's your name?
Bobby. That's it.
All right, you're just Bobby. I got to take your name off the website, though, because
Yeah.
your name's all over the website.
Yeah, just strike it out. Anyway, sorry, that we're hijacking the beginning of...
We talk about this every episode, though, so it's no different. It's canon for the podcast.
All right. What's up, bud?
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
Doing good.
Now, you guys are friends.
Yeah. We've known... How long have we known each other for? Like 10 years?
Yeah.
Something like that?
I think 2012. Or 2011 or 12 or something.
Well,
Yeah.
happy anniversary.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, yeah. And we know each other through Mark Bernetti, who I think all that stuff is defunct, right? The Idiom Mag and Piscataway House, all that stuff is no longer going?
The books are still available and published through Piscataway, but I don't know if they... that's my first two novels. So it's Tollbooth and Tollbooth and F-250, sorry.
Are they're still available?
Yeah.
They're not out of print? Wow, I thought that for some reason I thought that stuff was out of print.
No, it's been in print the whole time, and it's maybe they haven't put anything else out in a long time, and they haven't done the idiom in a long time. But no, those books are still in print through them.
Yeah, let's talk him into doing the idiom again because I don't know. I feel like New Jersey needs appalling aesthetics, but a righteous punk ethos in literary magazines.
Yeah, totally. And a couple of years ago, he did say he was going to start up the idiom again, send him some stuff. I talked to Mark a few days ago on the phone, and I think he said he hasn't really done anything with literature in like 4 years, you know. He's just been doing he's been playing in the band.
Yeah. Puppy Grease, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen them.
They're great. I'm like, dude,
All right.
I'm due to go see him again.
Okay, well, when you do, because I'm sure they're playing near me somewhere, because Mark's just like a local guy. Plus, he's marrying my brother's high school best friend.
Oh, cool.
Anyway, that's another story entirely.
Well, speaking of New Jersey, we can kick off the interview because there's been
Joey's trying to get us back on track.
There's been this weird kind of, not unexpected, but like so many novels that we read this season, the campus season, are with characters that are from New Jersey, and this book goes everywhere basically, but starts in New Jersey. And I think it's cool that we have, the podcast very New Jersey, but that we have representation, our hometown state represented, featured prominently in Teenager.
Yeah, well, anytime I go anywhere and I start talking to people, it just seems like someone's aunt is retired somewhere in New Jersey. They could be from like, the whole tri-state area. It just seems like they all want to retire in like Manchester, New Jersey, or Toms River, New Jersey, or something. and they're in these little retirement communities that are like, you could get to the beach, I guess, but they're also just tucked away a little bit. But they're still in these. I don't know. It's weird. So like I meet people all the time who are like, where they're from. Like, I was just talking to a guy the other day. He's from like upstate New York, and he's like, "Where are you from?" And I say the town, and he goes, "Oh wow, I used to go to the beach there every summer with my family," which isn't like unrealistic. It happens a lot, but he was coming from really far away, and then they were going specifically to Seaside Park and specifically to like the beach I go to. So I was like, oh, and that happens all the time.
Yeah, that's the weird thing is like with New Jersey geography, it's like either people know everywhere or they know nowhere. It's like, oh, where in New Jersey? I'm like, do you, how are you asking this question? How much knowledge do you have about New Jersey? Like if I say the town where I live, are you going to have any idea where that is? Oh, no, I only know Rutgers.
No, but everybody knows when, like, because if I talk to people, they say, where are you from? And I say Manasquan, they have no idea where that is. But then I'm like, I just place it between Asbury and Seaside, and they know, like, exactly what I'm talking about.
Shore points. Shore to please.
Yeah.
SHORE.
Yeah, it's not that uncommon. It's like California. They the main shore towns in California. It's just like a location people want to go to.
Also, it's like I think as far as your book is concerned, like New Jersey is also a good starting point because it's like it's a cross country novel, so it like has to start on one coast and end on the other, right? Like in order to take in all of the American mythos that we do, you have to sort of like traverse all of the geography of America. So it makes sense to start in New Jersey. And
Yeah, I think if I had started it at
starting in California and ending in New Jersey is backwards because nobody.
Well, it's not the American dream, right? Like the American dream is to go west.
Right. What's that called?
it's Manifest Destiny.
Manifest Destiny.
Yeah. I thought if I started it in Plymouth at Plymouth Rock, they would have cut my head off.
It's a little it's a little on the nose.
Yeah, but we end on the Oregon Trail. So
all right,
at the end of the Oregon Trail is where it ends.
Yeah, right on.
In a scene that Bob wanted you to cut from the original version of the novel.
Do you remember that? I talked about that in the app in the when we talked about the book. But like when I read the original version of this novel, whenever that was, must have been 5 years ago or so, and like you had sent me an early copy of it, and I gave you notes on it, and like one of the notes that I gave you was like, cut the stuff with them like living in the trees and things like that, because I was like, this feels like unrealistic, different from the rest of the book, and then and like obviously like I was completely wrong about that stuff, but like
no, you weren't wrong. I mean, sometimes it takes a long time to make the whole thing work together, and probably instead of cutting some of that stuff, like feedback is always great, but sometimes you get feedback and what's suggested, it's not right, or it's usually not right, or it's usually not wrong. It's just feedback, but it's pointing at something that's glaringly wrong in the book. It's out of balance. It's out of sync with itself. And I think probably what had to happen with the book was it needed more fantasy, and it needed more hallucinations and daydreams and like magical things in the rest of the book to make it so when we get to that part where they're living in the trees, you can kind of accept it. I
have a question about the earlier iterations, but before I get there, did you add in the, like, I don't know if you want to call it like brain, I guess brain damage is not unfair to say Cody's affliction, but like, did you add in his like sort of hallucinations, visions for that dreamlike quality? Like, does A become B in that sense, or is that just like an added, or is that like unrelated?
I can't ever really make sense of like when things happened and why it happened looking back, because I'm really good at destroying and erasing drafts, not only in physical reality, but like just from my mind. And I can kind of only like think. I have to print the book out each time or retype it. It's the best thing to do, really. And just like look at what it is for what it is now. So in some sense, yeah, I guess you could say, he probably did gain. The hallucinations became more important for the storytelling and the way it's told. As a way to kind of balance reality against the abstraction of how the emotions of the novel feel. But I can't remember like a moment where I was like, oh, if I do this, then it'll make sense of all my bullshit. It feels like you just have to kind of keep reading it and reworking it, and then set it down for a while. And I had a couple times when I like took a bunch of hallucinogenics and just thought about the book, and it was a terrible idea, and I just had like such a like bad experience. But then I sobered up the next day. I realized all the things that were really bothering me about the book that I thought were like definitely things I should get rid of, or probably things I should lean into, because they had bothered me so much.
Like, I think the elevation of the dreamlike stuff and the hallucinations and the movement away from like a harder realism into like kind of, because I think of it as a folktale almost, and the movement away from realism toward that folktale stuff really elevates everything that the story's doing. So when you're talking about editing, going back and re-envisioning the book and taking stuff out. Like, I know that you're not a precious writer, because we've talked about your process and things like that, and you are quick to kill your darlings, so to speak, right? Like nothing is too good to take out, or nothing's too like you can always rewrite it, right?
Yeah, I can always rewrite it. A lot of times I don't feel like I go too far backwards. So like every draft I do, I feel like I'm kind of usually going a little farther down the path of like what the stuff. I like to add things, and usually if I like delete, like let's say even if I go through a draft and it goes from 80,000 down to like 55,000, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm still stuck on the fact that the book was 80,000, and not that it's just a strange thing where that I'm like, oh great, now I can add back in all these. I'm trying to do the math. I'm just stupid. Whatever it is, 25,000 words of like better stuff, and it's just like a cool benchmark for me where I feel like it's kind of like a controlled burn of a forest or something. You know, getting rid of all the stuff, but then new things can grow there in that same space, and they can all be healthier and work together. But a lot of times, it's like just realizing the stuff that's kind of phoned in and not really working at its best, and being willing just to say, I either need to just I need to retype this from scratch, this 30 pages of it or whatever. I need to just retype it from scratch, or I need to like take the lid off the top of the thing, shake the story out on the ground, and start turning pieces of it upside down to try to see like what's on the other side of that character or this place or this interaction, just to kind of make it less of like a closed fist and more of an open hand kind of thing.
Was there a particular like moment or interaction or scene or character or anything that like you unlocked by like was there anything that you were trying to figure out, like even if you were unconsciously you're like something's not right here, something's off, I'm trying to figure out what this is, trying to make this work. Is there something that like that rewriting like really clicked into place with this one, or did it all just sort of like was it less cut and dry than that?
This one, not so much. This one, I kind of it began as like an outline a long time ago, and I could kind of see and like Bobby said, it's kind of based. It's like a folktale kind of thing, so it's based on a lot of like American myth kind of stuff. And you kind of, for me, I like know the tropes of it, and I was just trying to do the best I could with making the language completely personal and my own, and the point of view as personal and my own as possible within the confines of this is like some people rewrite Hamlet or whatever. This is like Bud Smith rewrites Babe and the Big Blue Ox or something.
Well, it's definitely part of like the Starkweather lineage, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
There's a number of American films and novels that are like there's the Starkweather murders where like Badlands came from that and Natural Born Killers came from that, and I think of this as being within the lineage of that. But I also think of this as like a much sweeter book than those stories are. I like these characters a lot better than I like Mickey and Mallory, and I like these characters a lot better than I like whatever Martin Sheen and Sissy. Although Sissy Spacek is pretty likable in that movie, but like I at the same time these are like Cody's a murderer. So
Well, I think part of that is that you do a great job of keeping Teal relatively pure.
Yeah, well, I just thought of them as abused people, and abused people, they react in different ways. Some people were interviewing me sometimes about the book, and they were kind of like a little bit like Teal's. She's way quiet in the beginning of the book, and like she's just shell shocked. She's gone through all this abuse from her father and her mother, just turning a blind eye to it. And she finally like has this thing happen where forced it to abortion, and it seems like she's just about to get away from all the shit she's enduring in America. She's about to be sent to Rome, and here comes the abused boyfriend. His reaction is totally different than hers, which is to kind of shut off. His reaction is to try to be the Don Quixote hero of it all, and shoots the parents. So I just thought of it as the misunderstood myth of the country, and people getting so many things wrong from like growing up watching Schwarzenegger movies or whatever. I guess he's a bad example. We're sending like an Austrian out to like kill the predator, but I'm just saying like we have these like this macho gun violence thing, and I grew up. I remember when the switch was flipped, and all of a sudden school shootings, Columbine, and it went from bomb threats all the time to someone's going to come and shoot the school up, and it's never gotten better. Every year it's only gotten worse. So we live in this obvious cycle of gun violence, but our history as a country has just been a cycle and lineage of genocide and perpetuated violence. So, I mean, how do you tell that story?
You tell the story of America, basically, right? Like, which this kind of is.
But it's also, I mean, and like part of that is that America is also this, like the American myth and the stories that come from that are also incredibly romantic and can be beautiful and things like that. But it's romance and beauty, but that's like rotted through. It's like an apple that you bite into and it's all fucked up inside.
Yeah, it's a place of denial and no self-awareness. So I tried to give that to all the characters. They're all pretty much in denial. They're all pretty much not self-aware. And even when they get the thing they thought they wanted, they are still, most of the time, just trying not to face up to the fact that all the energy they put towards getting there and getting towards it was not only a fool's errand, but much worse than that, usually.
Yeah. I am on record as saying that I think the coolest thing that anyone can possibly do is steal a cop car. So that really won me over to these characters and to their mission, regardless of any murders, because that's like an all-time dream of mine, is to steal a cop car. So
once you start writing like a story where like they're the Loki, the god of chaos, pretty much, and they can do whatever they want, and they can get away with it. I'm surprised he didn't steal a spaceship and blast off to the moon. But to a certain degree, it falls under that abstraction and that tall tale, folktale kind of thing.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing that, like, for a lot of the book, they both kind of feel invincible, and then there's a point where, because like all book long, you're like, there's no way that he makes it out alive. Like, it seems like that's just how these kind of things kind of end. Yet somehow he's still always one step ahead or getting lucky or whatever. And then there's the moment where like Teal almost dies. You're like, wait, I didn't see her. Like, how do you balance like sort of the bulletproof God mode video game sort of thing where it's like they can't die early on because then it becomes a completely different book. But like, how do you balance that with actually keeping like a suspense and like actual, narrative tension?
I'm not really sure. I certainly could have had him die in the third chapter. Still had something interesting and full of tension happen, but you're right, it would just become a different book. It's just like, you write these things and you're just trying to keep yourself interested, and there's something that happens each draft I kind of do. I will get bored, especially like I'm retyping the book, and I feel like if I'm sitting down at literally my typewriter, and I've printed it out from the computer and I put the laptop away and I'm sitting down and I'm doing this, if I'm just copying the words down from the computer laptop printout and I'm retyping it on the typewriter, I might as well shoot myself in the head. Like, what am I doing? It's like that's not what it is. It's making it a first draft again and making it exciting again, an advanced first draft, obviously, but you're trying to recapture that energy and excitement you had the first time you were like playing around with these things. And when you start to like pick at the plot, because that's really what it is. Like, a lot of writers are like, I'm a sentence writer, I just write sentences, and maybe that's true, but I think most writers are just they're doing a blend of everything, and they're just not being honest with themselves, and they're not honest with like generally what people want to read. And I know what I want to read, and that's all I can do, and I want to read something that's really blended with like a really dense plot and a dense actionable plot. I mean, like someone's going somewhere in a physical space doing something physical, but an emotional plot, right? So there's like a whole, we feel things, and it's always like, oh my God, did the characters change enough or whatever? And all that, none of that matters really. But what matters is, what do you feel a range of emotions as you're reading your own work and putting the work into it? So like when I talk about retyping things and improvising while I do it, is how it goes. It's like, am I actually feeling something when I'm doing this work, or am I just pecking out those letters how they are on that page like a dead person? You gotta have to like be open and try your best to really feel something deep and make yourself laugh, surprise yourself. I know people say that all the time, but it really is true. So we're talking about earlier, like Bobby was talking about deleting towards the end of the book. Got the critique, and not only from Bobby, I think I got it from early actual editors of the book, who were early publishers, who were like, you don't need the Oregon stuff. Like, it should just end in Los Angeles, and that should be it, whatever. But it's like, they don't need to get into the trees. They don't need to get into the up into the evergreen territory. But it's like, as you're writing the book again, as you're going through it again, all of a sudden they're at a zoo. Who better to talk about how to catch a tiger and how to make a tiger trap than an annoyed zookeeper, And the kid doesn't understand how to do it. So it just becomes this like inside joke within an inside joke within an inside joke, where all of a sudden, I've found a way to, okay, so the zookeeper tells them about, making like a Vietnam War tiger trap, and for them to actually, the logistics of them to actually do it. I just get excited by that, and then I start to work on it. I want to go back through the book and add this new little inside joke I have, and that's how it just changes over time.
Yeah, it's surprising, but especially like the tiger trap stuff, like functions as that kind of Chekhov's gun thing, but it's also masks in a way that you would never like see that. The reader, I don't think, sees that through to the end. But then when it happens, it's like, oh yeah, shit, of course. Because I think I know this is what I was thinking as a reader. The natural endpoint for this book, or like what you're thinking of as the natural endpoint for the book, is the confrontation between Teal's brother and Cody, right? Like that's the two gunslingers show up, they deal, they fight it out, and then the book ends right after that conflict. One of them wins, one of them loses. But you get to that point, and then there's like another 40 pages of book to go, or something like that.
And not only that, but it's almost like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's like an afterthought. It's just like it's over before it begins, and just like, all right, we're moving on.
Yeah, that's how I kind of approached the whole book. I thought a lot of these stories would probably have, the parents getting shot on like, page 75 or something. There's like, I don't think there's enough things that usually happen in a novel, especially like a funny novel. Someone will just be like telling a bunch of random jokes, but I still want to go places and see things and be surprised and outraged and shocked, God forbid.
Yeah, I was surprised at how quickly and how brutally they, because I assumed based on just the reading, because we were at the this was our first ever field trip for the podcast. We went to your reading for it. And I mean, just based on like what you read and the vibe and like the back of the thing, like I knew it was a road trip novel, but I sort of expected, I guess, just like the parents to kind of be in pursuit. But like when they're like erased in like the first 15 pages or whatever, just like, oh, okay, I didn't see that. So now then it like almost opens up like, well, I don't know anything that's going to come.
Yeah, I mean, they used to get killed a lot sooner, but as you go along and you're in draft 15 of the thing, so every time you do a new draft, you're like, oh wow, this is the best thing I ever wrote. The first new chapter of the book, this is the best thing I ever wrote. I had some friends who read maybe like draft 13 or and then what's published is draft 15, let's say, and it's out from Vintage. But my friend was like mad at me. He's like, what the fuck happened to the opening chapter? It's gone, And I was like, don't worry. If you look carefully enough, I took that stuff and I put it into the only like real flashback in the book where.
Oh yeah, that part is great.
When he first meets, when he goes to the church, and when he's at school, he goes to the church and meets Teal at the football game.
Yeah, that helped us fit in officially into the campus season. So thank you for that.
Oh, cool.
Some of it happened on a school.
Oh, I got you.
We would have done it anyway, but even now we can't have any sticklers like, oh, it didn't take place at a school. Well, it did.
Oh, that's so funny.
I was very quick question about the opening. I'm very interested in structure of things, and I don't know that I've ever read a book that starts with chapter 0, and then I don't remember what the last one is, if it's chapter end or chapter last or chapter fin or something like that. But like, you don't start with 1. Like, what was the thinking of starting with 0?
Well, there used to be, like I said, there was a different chapter that opened it up, and then I think we got to the water tower. It didn't used to open up with. It didn't even used to have escaping from from that facility. He just kind of mentions it through conversation a couple times that he's broken out of this place and he's he went to see her. So you usually just start off at the top of the water tower was how it started, and that was chapter 1 for a long time. And then I kept like throughout the years, a lot of people reach out here and there and they're like, hey, I got this book, do you want to swap or like whatever? And I started teaching workshops at my apartment here, and I would notice so many times like. The thing that I didn't like about a lot of stories was that if it was linear, like out of time, and it was like so many flashbacks that the whole time you couldn't consider anything a flashback. Time was just really slippery. It was great, but I usually hated it if I read a book and it was like in linear time, and then all of a sudden we just have like a random ass flashback, and then it goes back to linear time, then we go a little longer, we have a random ass flashback. For some reason, it always like really took the air out of the tires. So I would always like, my comments for those kind of stories was like, why don't you just put this cool shit in order? And when you have it in order, maybe you can even focus on like the tension of how one scene to another actually builds on the thing. Because if you take it out of order, sometimes that stuff gets erased. So I gave myself that own advice in this book and move that thing to the front.
But you have touched on a thing that drives me absolutely crazy, and that I've been like railing against for I don't even know how long. Is
I'm sure we've talked about it on the podcast.
Stuff that doesn't have to be nonlinear. That for some reason, like they just throw us back. Like everything that you just
Every
said,
TV show now
is something that I've been complaining about for like years.
Yeah, and I mean flashbacks are really cool when like they're handled with someone I think who is like really considering like the benefits of like telling that kind of story. Flashbacks can be amazing, and like nonlinear storytelling really, not flashback. You know, it represents like a certain kind of, you know, way of thinking and psyche on parts of characters. Let's say usually like famously maybe in like Slaughterhouse-5, there's a reason why it's told at a time. The guy's got PTSD and he's seeing UFOs. And he's on the UFO in a UFO prison at the same time. He's like imprisoned in a Nazi, you know, POW camp. So like, I get all that and it's wonderful. But like for me, sometimes I'm like, you know what, man, I just think like I can do a better job if I really focus on that. But like to actually answer your question, so why is there chapter 0? Why is there chapter, I don't even know, 15 and a half? There's chapter 22 and a half, whatever it is. If you look through the book, there's like, you know, random chapters where the reason why that started happening was because almost in the final drafts of the book, that where it was starting to, we were figuring out where the art's going to get placed and why. We would start to like look at, you know, oh wait, we should put this drawing in here, but I'm going to break it up and put another chapter here, just speak to like fit the art better, to make it like more of an art object was like the idea. And I thought a lot of times like, oh, I really want to put this illustration at the end of the chapter, but right now that'd be in the middle of this chapter, so I'm going to make a new one. I don't really sweat the small stuff a lot of times. So like, I think the book has kind of like a disheveled, shaggy kind of like structure in a way, and the characters and the way everybody thinks and the way it's designed and laid out is like purposefully just like, let's make this thing a strange, shaggy art object. You know, it's chapter 0 because I didn't want to renumber every chapter in the book. You know, I was like, I'm not doing that again. You know, I'm just going to focus on the writing, and I'm going to focus on like getting the story as amazing as possible in what felt like the limited time I had to like really do the most amazing draft I could do. And I certainly wasn't going to spend, 4 hours on some shit that didn't matter, making sure I had the, chapter numbers in order and correct. I said, that stuff doesn't matter. What really matters is the story is propulsive, fun and strange, and as beautiful as I can make it. If I had something in there that was odd and off, I thought it matched the spirit of the book, but it wasn't so much done to be weird or to like, you know, it just happened through building the thing, and I left the mistakes in. That's all I can say about that.
Well, I think it's cool. Can you talk a little bit about, I think we mentioned it on the podcast briefly, but the art that you mentioned about placing the art was done by your wife, Ray, and it's just very cool. Like, it's not always like what I would picture, because like there's almost like a picture per chapter, and it's not always the type of picture that I would expect to see in that chapter, like associated with that chapter or whatever, but it's cool. So what was that process like, working with her and getting that in there?
Well, it was great. When I first heard, one of the first things I heard was, Vintage wanted to buy the book, and they had 2 questions. Did I want to edit it? Which I was like, oh, I could say no to that? So, but I wanted to edit it. You know, I told the editor, I said, I want to do 3 more drafts of this thing. And the content never regressed. If anything, it got wilder. It got more developed in a savager way that I didn't expect a large press would. I thought they, censor you a bit, and that wasn't my experience. But so that was pretty great. When I say too, it got savager emotionally too, not just like blood and guts. I think I was kind of let go however I wanted. Run wild with it. Don't worry about it. I was never like under the impression that I could say offensive things or something. But the other question was, can we illustrate this thing? And I was like, I heard that, and I was like staring at the email, like, oh man, this is how they're going to ruin it, But I just said, well, yeah, totally, let's do it. Let's sign this contract. And I figured they would probably propose a bunch of illustrators to me, and I'd see their sample work, and who knows, maybe I'd see the most amazing shit I ever seen. But I figured probably it would wind up being stuff I didn't like, and I could kind of weasel my way out of it, you know. But then next thing I knew, my agent had sent the editor a copy of Dust Bunny City, which me and Ray had done, and they wanted to hire her.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it was great. So we had talked about this a lot, and I feel like I'm just repeating myself endlessly, but we had like a home arts and crafts project that we just work on. So she would draw. She had a list of things the editor was like, oh, this would be cool for this chapter, and it was like 50 things or something. She drew all that stuff and sent, after like a month or two, sent that in, and he was like, wow, these are fucking awesome. And then she just kept going. She redrew a lot of the things. She was like not happy with a lot of the things, the way they were coming out after like multiple drafts of the drawing. So she would just invent new things for the chapter based on like the way it felt. So she would get abstract with some of the content to kind of represent what the characters were feeling or what they were going through, rather than like drawing Graceland itself, which was like a suggestion. Somehow she wound up drawing bananas because and I don't know, those are some of my favorite ones in the book, where she just couldn't get what the suggestions were. Like Todd Portnovitz was the editor, so he had this list, and it was wonderful. And probably like 60% of the drawings in the book are just things that Todd said the first time, like, wow, this would be cool, and so Ray he's got a real vision. He's a really brilliant man, and really easy to be inspired by, and very quick on his toes with, like, you throw him a curveball, and he's a lot like a lot of my friends in real life who I admire. You can just talk to them about stuff, and they like always have some kind of strange idea that you can just kind of like chase down. He actually reminds me a lot of you and Bobby, you and Mark Bernetti. You guys are just like down to try whatever, But like you were when we did.
Bob is smiling.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take the compliment.
When we did the edits on Tollbooth, it was the same thing. I remember the way I got the edits for that book. You remember, Bobby? You guys sent me an hour-long PDF of you guys just arguing about.
Yeah, MP3.
An MP3, yeah. And it was great. I just listened to that. I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. And I remember just going through it based off this argument you guys had, and just like worked on the book for a few months and sent it back.
Yeah, I remember wondering if that was the most effective way for us to do that. But Mark was just like, Mark and this other guy, Ink, came to my apartment, and he put a microphone in the middle of the table, and he was just like, let's just talk about the book, and that'll be what we do. And I was like, all right, let's do this. I don't know if this will...
Yeah, no,
we are the original bad boy of book podcasting.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that stuff's great. So, that worked for us here on this project, too, in a way. So anyway, so now Ray has all the drawings. She has like 65 or whatever of the drawings, and we like started to now worry. We were really worried because all of a sudden now the professionals are going to get involved, So the professionals are going to start sticking the art in the book, and sometimes they could do something really beautiful, and other times I think they could do something a little too formal. So I was drafting up these emails explaining like the vision for the book and how I wanted it to be like a little anarchistic and an art object in a way. And like me and Ray were just like, fuck it, let's just lay the book out ourselves. Let's make a PDF or example of this thing in like a word processing program. It's not going to be the best, but it's going to look similar to how it should look when it's done.
Yeah.
And we wound up sending that to the designer, and they were just like, awesome, I know what to do now. And they pretty much mimicked it. They definitely improved on some of the things we did and made it even more interesting. But I think we gave them a pretty good guide, and it worked out. And I don't know if I just never knew you were really allowed to do that stuff. I thought you always offend, and maybe I did offend somebody.
No, it seems like in almost like good fortune and everything, like the editor you had and like the publisher and this art designer, it's like it feels like a lot of things you're doing, it's just like it could piss people off. They're all like, this is cool, man. Like it just seems like everybody was like unknowingly or accidentally or just happenstance on the same page, which just sort of seems like it was meant to be.
Yeah, this project was really meant to be. There was never any hiccups or headaches, and every new draft of it and every new design draft of it, it got cooler and cooler and cooler, and there was never a moment really where I was just like, oh my God, what a mistake. What a mistake. And I think a lot of authors have that happen to them, and they feel like they didn't get to do what they wanted. And yeah, I did just get lucky. That's why I want to keep working with these people.
For listeners that haven't, I don't know why you would listen to the podcast without having read the book, because there's spoilers all over the place, but the drawings are like kind of blind contours, but not really blind contours. A blind contour is a drawing where you draw something without looking at the page, and so like the lines don't exactly line up, but it's very clear that's not what it is, because the illustrative quality of it, you can definitely tell what everything is very clearly, I think.
Yeah, she has a really interesting way she edits her work and redrafts it. She'll do like a scribble blind contour of it and like have a stack of them. What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And I'll look at them and I'll be like, oh man, I don't know. There's something really interesting about this one. This one's the ugliest or the weirdest. And I'll say, do you think you can make it more mutated or melted or something? And so sometimes she'll just, pointedly redraw it in that same style, but no longer blind contour in that direction.
Right.
And other times she'll just take it and she'll scan it into the computer and she'll start to stretch it with scaling, and she'll manipulate it in Photoshop, print that out, and then just redraw from that. So eventually,
wow, that's really
so she has like a really mixed approach to how she does it, and she'll make like some things she does a bunch of drawings of, and then she's like, oh, this would be more interesting as a block print, and she'll start to cut the block print out and do that, and then wind up manipulating that in Photoshop, and that turns into a new version of the block print. And it just kind of keeps evolving, and like the same kind of feeling I think I'm going for with the reason why I redrafted. That's how she does her art. She's just kind of like, every time she comes back to the sketch, she wants to like make it more interesting and surprising, and or why bother redoing it? It's not to perfect it. It often gets, in a way, worse and more interesting, and more takes on a new quality with more energy in it. And sometimes the sketches regress. You can see they get sloppier or rawer, and they get more interesting.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, because like I generally like art, not just art, but like writing as well, that is sloppy and imperfect, because it definitely has like an energy that like sort of cold perfection doesn't really often have.
Yeah, totally. I think some people who maybe read this novel, they might be turned off by some of my other work because it's different, or it goes in different directions, and I think that's kind of the point of why you keep doing it, why you keep making stuff. Because otherwise, if you just keep perfecting what you do, I don't think it goes anywhere. It doesn't get any deeper than that.
I feel like I tried to pressure you into writing a science fiction novel. Is that true? Did I do that?
Some people over the years have said I should write. They want to see a fantasy novel for me or a science fiction novel for me, and I do have one I've been working on. I've written a couple drafts of it on my my typewriter, which is like how I love to work that way. And it's like, I just think it's going to just take me a while. It's maybe a little bit more of a fantasy, sci-fi kind of thing, meeting kind of like the style of Teenager in a way. But I think if you read like James Joyce or like Hemingway, those books where they match the prose to the age and experience of the characters.
Sure.
So I'm just saying, there's like a naivety. Naivety, is that how you can say that word?
That's an impossible word to pronounce.
Yeah.
It's a word that I've read a million times, and I couldn't tell you how it's pronounced.
Yeah, it's like
naivete.
Naivete, yeah, it's tied to these characters. And
what was the word that I learned how to pronounce in the podcast?
Oh, ennui.
Ennui.
Yeah, Joey, in like the first episode of the podcast, Joey fucking totally bungled
Ennui.
ennui, and I was maybe a little too mean to him about it.
Well, it didn't stick with me fully. I'm still scarred by it, but like the scar is scabbed over, so.
Yeah, well, you're not French.
That's a good point, yeah. That's a good point. There's lots of French shit that I can't pronounce, too. So, the nature of this, of the podcast, is that it functions kind of a book club, so we do things by modules. So each thing is like a 10-book block. We're not going to make you name 10 books, but can you create a little module for us of other people's books that you could, like, if you could make people read 3 books with a sort of theme?
Either like inspired by or related to or thematically similar to your book, or not at all. If you just like 3 books that you think are cool or whatever.
Also, sorry for springing this question on you without prepping you for it before.
No.
Some friend you are.
No, not at all. No, I can definitely mention some books that are like this.
Well, because I think what's interesting about the type of story that this is that there are so many, like, and a lot of movies and shows that I love that sort of fit this mold, but they all feel different from one another, and this feels different from all those. So like, it's not like the structure is not new, but what you do within the characters you create is new enough and different enough and fresh enough to like feel still exciting. But like True Romance, like we talked about, and Badlands and Natural Born Killers and all these like bad people sort of on the run, it's been done, but it still feels cool. There's still untapped potential there.
Yeah, there always will be in genre fiction, which is not what this is. It's the outlaw road trip novel or whatever. It's the Kill Your Parents novel. A lot of writers they drive me crazy because they think they're above genre. You know, they're like, oh, I write literary fiction. It's just about the sentences and it's just about the sentences and there's not a plot and all this stuff. And like, that is so rarely true. You know, there usually is just like a really undeveloped plot and some sentences that the writer probably thinks are changing the world. But really, to most readers, they're just kind of like, well, shit, you know, she had some of those beautiful sentences tied to some kind of meat and potatoes kind of thing. And
yeah, it's a lot of people like reflecting on their day while sitting in a bathtub.
yeah, and listen, Thomas Bernard is the genius of that. You know, he doesn't have to have anything happen, but you read his books and everything happens. It's just like, he's a genius. And, you know, Malloy by Beckett, and nothing happens, but he's a genius. And like, I'm just trying not to ever pretend or start to think that I don't need to like do these things. I'm not trying to disappear at my own asshole, like Vonnegut says. But anyway, so you have all these genres that are like really amazing. So novels in this genre, I think people should read, and it's probably like that whole quest. The quest across America is probably like the theme that ties them all together, and it all seems to come from like, you know, the Don Quixote thing initially. So if people haven't read Don Quixote, obviously that's not America, that's Spain. Maybe you heard that book is a classic, and you know you've heard it's important. And whenever I start hearing books are important, especially when I was younger, I was like, oh, that's not a good sign
For sure. Yeah.
But Don Quixote's that rare classic that is as funny and fresh now probably as it was written. It's so good, and I think people should not avoid that one. I'm not saying it has filler, but it's a satire of things that don't exist anymore. So it's kind of hard sometimes to like understand. It's a satire of a lot of like stories of chivalry that we don't know anymore too much. So you read it and if it feels like you should skip a part, you know. But anyway, so Don Quixote's amazing, and it's like trying to think, it's like some more modern ones that are more really tied to it in America. So Norwood by Charles Portis. So Charles Portis, he wrote the Great Western, one of the great westerns, True Grit, which has been, you know, obviously adapted in a few films, and that's an amazing book of his, and that's maybe his only real genre book, and it's a western, obviously. But he wrote a few other amazing comic novels that are, some of them road trip novels, like Norwood. It takes place on a bus from, I think it's from Alabama to New York City. Norwood comes back from the Korean War on like discharge because his sister needs someone to take care of her. And when he gets there, the sister's got this new husband who's driving Norwood crazy. So he goes off on this errant fool's quest to get $75 and somebody owes him in New York City. And he just rides the bus for most of the novel to try to like get there. And it's just like an endless encounters with like strange people. And I think that's like something that happens in Teenager a lot. And it's just that old like, you know, Odysseus Odyssey quest thing. You know, you get to a new place and you meet a new wacky character and they teach you some new thing. But that just comes from ancient folk tales and tall tales. And Norwood does a good job of that too.
Sure. I think that I think that I read a Charles Portis book at your recommendation, and I can't remember the name of it.
Well, maybe you read Dog of the South, which is another book on a bus. This guy's on a bus chasing his ex-wife, who got back together with her first husband, all down through Central America on this bus called the Dog of the South, and it's like a slow chase. He's after her on bus with all these stops along the way, and every time he gets to a new town, he calls the credit card company and finds out she's just one step ahead on the route that they're taking. So
this guy loves buses.
He loves buses, yeah, and I love authors who do that, who are like, you know what, I'm not done writing about buses yet. Or like
I love bus too. I love buses. I love trains. It's a great way to, I don't know, have run-ins with people that you would otherwise. So it's like structurally good for the thing you're kind of talking about, where you will run into people. The novel, the Portis novel that you recommended to me was called Gringos.
Gringos was probably, I'm surprised I suggested that. I was like one of the only ones of his that I thought was like not as good.
Oh, weird. Maybe you were going to read. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how it went. But
because I think as he goes along, they get maybe a little bit better up to True Grit, and then he's got one called Masters of Atlantis, which is about basically a dissection of a cult, like the Freemasons or something, or like the Church of Scientology, and they live in this big old crumbling, mansion, pretty much, and like it's just this guy's. It's like The Master in a lot of ways, actually.
We should do a cult module.
Hell yeah.
That with like Emma Klein's The Girls and
write that down.
Yeah, all right, cult module.
Bob has all these ideas for things like we should do this, and then like we just forget them because there's too many things going on in the world. So
it looks like I wrote cunt module on my pad.
Do that. And then I guess
write that down too.
Yeah, write that down. So the other book I'd recommend is Lonesome Dove, which is, they made it into like a mini series in the 90s. Sure. Some people maybe watched it if they're my age or something. I never did watch it, but that book is about these Texas Rangers who live down in Texas, and it's after they have nothing, they have no more genocide left to commit after the Indian massacres, so they have to do something new with their lives, and they decide to steal a bunch of cattle from Mexico and drive it up to Montana, which has just opened up, and it's supposedly like cattleman heaven. So once again, a fool's errand. They go off on this like biblical quest of natural disasters and run-ins and romances, and it's a really sweet, romantic, and funny book. And
that's Larry McMurtry, right?
Yeah, that's McMurtry, who is just.
Who also did he do Last Picture Show?
Yeah, he did Last Picture Show.
Okay.
He wrote a book that was adapted into HUD, which is amazing. Everybody should watch HUD. Paul Newman, so good. But he's got so many books. It's kind of hard to crack into his stuff. You kind of have to just orbit around it for a while and pick at the major ones. But everything I read by him has been really good. But he's got some hidden gems that I think as I continue to be alive, I'll probably figure out are his best books that I just haven't gotten to yet.
And there is one more book that you and I have talked about that I thought about when I was reading this book, which is the John McPhee book about the Pine Barrens.
Oh yeah, of course. So if Cody and Teal wind up in the Pine Barrens, and they wind up spending maybe there's 10 pages or so out of the book, which just kind of roaming around and lost in that area. And I spent a lot of time growing up, in the Pine Barrens and messing around there. And as a kid, looking for the Jersey Devil, and as an adult, driving around and going to bonfires and parties in the Pine Barrens and stuff. And it's just such an amazing place. And it's where the Hicks in New Jersey go. It's a lot of people don't realize that New Jersey's got Hicks too.
We got everything, man.
Yeah. Some might say that most of New Jersey is Hicks.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's great. And I think once you get into Hick territory, you're actually in America.
Sure.
A lot of times when you're just in these suburbs of New York City, and even maybe Philadelphia doesn't have a whole lot of actual suburbs for as sprawling as it is, because it's just it seems like you even got Hicks in Philly. You got Philbillies.
Well, it does seem like America exists in cities and in rural areas, and then the suburbs feel like kind of bullshitty.
Totally. Yeah, I think obviously, like I know I live in Jersey City and live around New York, and it's just like I feel like I'm just in the world. You know, everybody's just here, and their cultures are prevalent. It feels good, you know.
Yeah.
But when I get into what I call, you know, America, I know I'm in just as great a cultural place, but it's got its own specific set of superstitions and beliefs and stuff. And yeah, do your own research, shit. You know. Did you do your own research?
Yeah, those sort of closed insular communities that can feel very very closed off to any outsiders. I mean, up north there's the Ramapo Hill people, and that stuff can feel very like I had a student one time that wrote a paper about how they're sort of pejoratively called the Jackson Whites. Do you know them?
Yeah.
So I had a student one time wrote a paper about how he was like it was a narrative nonfiction piece where he was writing about how he like drove into their neighborhood like because he wanted to go gawk at them, and then like they sort of sealed him off from leaving and started like throwing rocks at the car.
Well,
And
good.
his point, yeah, exactly. Like his point with the story was that like these people are freaks, and my point was like you shouldn't have gone to fucking gawk at them, man. You were not like entering that in a good faith situation. Like you went there because you thought that they were freaks.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They treated you like someone who's treating them like they were freaks.
Yeah, yeah, and that person deserves all the bad stuff that happens to them. They deserve it. I mean,
Yeah.
so let me see. Let me see if I got one more novel or two for you here. So this one's even worse for me to recommend because it's from a guy who loves Holocaust and genocide. Peter Honke. He wrote an amazing book called Short Letter, Long Farewell, which is a satire in a way of like American noir, which I always love when Europeans write about that kind of stuff. Like they usually have such an amazing perspective to ridicule and enhance even some of the elements of the tropes of it. He wrote this novel called Short Letter, Long Farewell, which is it's a lot like I was describing Dog at the South, how like this guy is chasing his ex-wife. Well, this guy he's after his ex-wife too. He's coming from Eastern Europe, I think, to meet up with her. But she's calling him and leaving messages at hotels that he finds. So like he's not doing any of the work to find her really. She's like taunting him, kind of like I'm here, I'm there, and like he realizes that she's going to try to kill him, but for some reason he's still drawn to like go and I don't know, get killed by her, I guess. And he's headed west, and he winds up finding his brother as a logger out in Oregon. He finally gets there and sees his brother, and he just spies on him in the woods taking his shit, and then he's like, all right, saw my brother. And
As you do, yeah.
yeah, it's a fucking amazing book. Yeah, it's so funny and weird.
But I'm sorry, the guy is a pro Holocaust fella.
Yeah, something like that. He was like he went to Slobodan Milosevic's funeral. He was like a supporter of his or something, which was
Okay.
like, you know, not the World War II Jewish Holocaust, but different. I think.
He's like a genocide supporter. I don't know enough about Slobodan Milosevic.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have referred to it as the Holocaust, but just like a Holocaust, a genocide, a Holocaust. I'm not looking forward to, generations from now when a certain amount of people get mass murdered and we call it, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people get mass murdered and we call it the genocide. Right now we have the Holocaust, but we don't have the genocide yet. But
That's a good point.
so let me see. I'll give you one last one. So this book I always recommend to people, and I love so much. It's another European book. It's by Toby Johnson. She's the creator of the Moons, and she's got the Moons are great. Finnish Dr. Seuss or something. But
Yeah, I know. I know about them. Yeah, very very popular.
yeah, so she's a genius in many different forms, and she writes literary fiction aimed at adults, cranky adults, and she wrote this really slim novel called Fair Play, which is about her and her partner living. I think they live in like Stockholm. They're living in Switzerland or something, and living in this apartment in separate apartments, but with like a passage that connects like a shared communal attic somehow. So they do a lot of their artwork there, and they watch. It's a lot like this Peter Hanke book where it's a satire on America. They watch like westerns, and they talk about the influence of American culture on like the things they like, and they talk about American history and why Americans are how they are. And it's like just so interesting because it's like talked about this before, but it's like Led Zeppelin trying to play like black blues music. They can't do it because they're just from Mars, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they're like trying to play Muddy Waters, and it becomes this other thing. But when like people from Switzerland are trying to write like a Bukowski novel or something, which is a little bit like what Fair Play's like, but much more elegant, it winds up taking on this completely just vivid and different, or maybe more about like a Henry Miller novel or something. But it's just like they wind up, after they critique America and they're making all this art together, they decide to go on vacation. So they go to the American Southwest, and they have a bunch of like experiences down at these strange hotels down in the deserts of like New Mexico. And they're in Gallup, which I visited, which is amazing. It's like they built this big old hotel there right outside Gallup where they filmed a lot of Westerns and stuff. And so when you stay there, the rooms are all named after big Western stars, and you can stay in the Ronald Reagan room and stuff. And yeah, it's just an incredible book. Fair Play by, I call her Tove Johnson.
Sure, yeah.
But it's, if you're from...
That is Joey's been sort of logging these on his phone, and it's a New York Review of Books classic.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, I don't know, you can probably picture it in your head, the way those books look.
Yeah, that's what this is too. It's a New York Review of Books. She's got a few of them. True Deceiver, Summer Book, Fair Play, which is my favorite of them.
All right. Well, I'll check it out. We're compiling all these, and maybe we'll use them to create modules in the future. Who knows? Who knows what we'll do with these lists?
Yeah. But I'm bad at that because people will say, "Look, what's a great road trip novel?" And I'm like, To the Lighthouse, which is like my favorite novels. Every time I can just like talk about To the Lighthouse, I'm happy.
That's I'm fascinated that To the Lighthouse is your favorite novel. We could talk about that for a very long time.
That's a major plot point in the major motion picture Nerve, starring Emma Roberts.
Never heard of it.
It's very dumb, and I love it very much.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, To the Lighthouse. If we ever read To the Lighthouse for this podcast, we'll bring you back on, and we'll talk modernism and Virginia Woolf.
You never read that book? That's really
No, I read it. I read it in school.
I haven't read it because I'm an uneducated fool.
It's a.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse is a really interesting book that's not fun at all, I don't think, which is...
Maybe it's not fun. I tried to read it when I was younger. Like, didn't go to college. Being prescribed books thing kind of never really worked for me because I would have to just find them laying around. Like, even in high school, I didn't like to read what we had to read it for class. But I would read the books that were laying around. Like, other classes were reading Catcher in the Rye, which I never had to read for school, I don't believe. I read that years before I would have had to read it because it's just laying around. It's like, what is this? And then you pick it up, and you're on your own. To the Lighthouse. I think I was 22 or so, and I remember I kind of came to it, and I was like, what is this? I started reading it, and I'm like 50 pages in. I'm like, all right, she's just fucking with me. Like, we're not going to this lighthouse. So we're not going there. And I probably 15 years later, when I was reading Ulysses for the first time, I wound up reading like a chapter of it a week for 18 weeks. And once I got the ball rolling, I'm like, all right, the first week I'll read chapter 1, and then I'll read Hamlet or something because I'd never read Hamlet. And I was like, then I'm on the hook. I'm like, all right, I'm trying to read what are considered some of the greatest books ever written or plays or whatever that are like small enough to digest in a week. And I fell down the track of the modernists with a lot of Faulkner stuff and Virginia Woolf stuff. And that stuff was amazing, really amazing. and a lot of times it's better than Ulysses.
My take on that is that, you know, high school students are always getting assigned Nathaniel Hawthorne or like stuff that they're like, that stuff is great, but you have to like learn how to love to read before you start reading things like that. And if you don't already love reading, then that stuff will like just dick punch you. You won't like get out of it alive. It will turn you off. So like if I had been forced to read To the Lighthouse when I was in high school, I probably would have ran screaming. But you know, by the time I was older, and I read it for a class in grad school, and I loved it then. But like I had to learn how to read before I really enjoyed that book, you know?
Yeah, totally. And that's a book too that like, if you're a writer and you're like, well, I'm not sure what I can do. If you read those modernists, there's so much incredible stuff that they improved on or invented or experimented with that is so, it's been abandoned in the way people write now. Right. That it can be brought back and subvert a lot of things.
If someone started like picking from Gertrude Stein, like it would be an interesting, refreshing. Nobody would know what to do with that book now, and it would be like almost like introducing a brand new style all over again.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so it's like the whole floating consciousness stuff. That was really helpful, rewriting the drafts of Teenager into the third person, seeing how that works, and clumsily. You know, Virginia Woolf just sits down and it just comes to her. She's a genius, but
I think probably she was a 13 draft person, 15 draft person too. So I think that probably tortured herself over sentences and stuff like that.
Maybe my future is walking into the river with a bunch of stones.
Maybe that's all of our futures. Maybe from here on out we're all stones in the pockets into the rivers, people.
She's a Jeff Buckley died in a river lady.
Yeah. Jeff Buckley is a died in a river Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
He was copying her.
Yeah.
Really? No, I don't think Jeff Buckley killed himself. I think he died accidentally.
He died in the river, though.
Yeah, he tried to go swimming in the Mississippi River at like midnight or something.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah, poor Jeff.
Yeah, it's so bad for anybody who drowns. That's got to be the worst way to go. The other day, though, I was at work, and the safety guy was talking about, so it's something tragic that happened, and as soon as I hear that, I start to be like, gotta get my game face on. And he starts talking about someone who died in his town. Can we have a moment of silence for this guy? He says his name. He says, I didn't know this guy very well. I only talked to him 4 times. I knew of him, but I didn't really know him. And I talked to him 4 times, and I was like, well, how do you do that? How do I talk to someone 4 times and then still consider that I don't know them? I know of them. I don't know. I would just assume as soon as I even say good morning, more than good morning to somebody, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that person.
Man, but, if I had to eulogize everyone that I only talked to 4 times who died,
I would do it. Man. But I'm the kind of person who a random internet person writes to me and is like, hey, I'm getting married. Write me a poem or something. I'm like, oh, let's do it. I just had to write somebody a happy birthday letter for just, I'll just, whatever, who am I?
All right. Well, you guys heard it here first. Email Bud Smith and he'll write poems for your wedding.
Yeah, Bud, we're up at 2, you and me. So I got 2 more and then I can safely die and you'll eulogize me. So I'm halfway there, I guess.
You are. I will eulogize you. And I also, if people write, I will write them a poem for their wedding. But it's probably not going to be what you want. It never is. But so anyway, so this guy's talking about this tragic thing, and he knows this guy in town. He dies. He knows of him, not knows him. And then he says how he died. He fell into a pit of raw sewage, and that was my reaction. I fucking started laughing, and they kind of looked over at me like, "What the fuck's so funny?" And I was just like, "You got to be kidding me!" Mel Brooks says. Tragedy is when I cut my finger. Comedy is when someone falls in an open sewer and dies. And it is. Sorry. But so, we were making light of Virginia Woolf killing herself in a river with stones. Not funny. Jeff Buckley drowns himself suicidally. Not suicidal, just drowns. And not funny. But the guy who fell in the open pit of raw sewage and died. Hilarious.
Well, what I love about this story is that it puts a bookend on both the season, because we started the season with Sylvia Plath, famously dead, and now we're ending with Virginia Woolf, also famously dead. And we started this episode talking about New Jersey, and we end it with Toxic Avenger falling into a vat of toxic waste and being New Jersey's only superhero and becoming, who he is.
Yeah.
So,
and it's also good because I don't want to perpetuate the hysterical woman thing and suicidal hysterical women, Dr. Freud shit. And there's just as many men killing themselves in real life, and some of them do it in sewage pits.
Wait, did this guy kill himself? He threw himself into a sewage pit?
Well, he fell in there. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I was gonna. That's like a savage self-hating thing. You're like, I'm gonna kill myself, and I'm gonna do it by throwing myself into raw sewage.
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
In the worst way.
well, thank you so much for joining us, Bud. This was great. And thank you for writing Teenager. I really liked it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, man. Well, I will. I think I'll see you tomorrow because you're doing a reading at Thunder
Oh
Road
shit!
Books,
Oh, you're gonna go? Cool.
Yeah, it's right down the street from my house. But this is this episode won't come out until after that's already done. So,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
This past weekend, you guys hung out.
yeah, this past weekend. Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
So I'll see. What time is that tomorrow?
It's 1 p.m.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
I know.
I thought it was at night, but
Well, you're
cool.
a day walker now.
Yeah, I'll be there. 1 p.m. Thunder Road.
Cool.
See you tomorrow, bud.
Yeah, see you tomorrow, man. Thanks for future comment.
Oh wait, hold on. We close Bob closes every episode by saying today's crime. Pick any crime. What's today's crime? Today's crime is not you, him.
Okay, yeah. What's a cool crime, bud?
Today's crime is
Today's crime is lying to your mother.
Oh shit.